6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Stoned Housewife Lifted Life, your weekly dose of all things metaphysical, cannabis, and three-dimensional and beyond related, with your host Maggie. If you enjoy this podcast, remember to check us out sparingly Saturdays, every other Saturday it seems to be now, and download the latest episode on iTunes. This episode we're going to be talking about frequency control, some upcoming cannabis events, and some awesome things in the 3D realm that have to do with Broadway. So sit back and relax and check out what's going on in my lifted life. Up first, we're going to talk about the Solfeggio frequency and how frequency changes your way of life. So starting out, in the background, you'll hear a slight musical accompaniment, which is 963 hertz. This frequency stops you from, doesn't stop, but it helps you from overthinking and releasing anxiety. It is the highest frequency to the light. It is direct light. It is source. So it will help you to enhance your frequency with the non-physical vibrations of the spirit world that we live in. So moving on to what is a solfeggio frequency. So everyone knows the sound of music, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Well, solfeggio is the classic educational method that most of us knew growing up. It's used in schools in the West from elementary school all the way through college to teach which pitches belong to the scales that we currently use. And right now it's all based around do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. There's the fixed do that we learn as kids that matches the C major scale. Then there is the movable do, which is what we learn to learn how to sing in different octaves. While the original tone of the 7-note diatonic scale is unknown, the furthest we can track it back to is Eric psalmization, same as solfeggio. It's just what they called it, and the Hindu and Carnatic classical styles from India. So there was this guy, and he is supposedly the person who came out, who originally made the notation system. Stretching back to, it looks like 1000 BC or even further, his name was Guido of Arezzo, and he lived from 990 AD to 1030 AD, and he was an Italian music theorist who's credited with being the inventor of the modern musical staff and the notation that goes along with it, replacing the old system that was stifling the learning process for the musicians. So basically, he was a music theory master, and he saw that his fellow monks were having a really hard time learning the Gregorian chants. So he developed a mnemonic system that goes ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la. And it was such a big thing that he made this, that the Pope at the time invited him to the Vatican to discuss it. Soon after that, we began using the 7-note system mentioned above. So the question becomes why and what happened. So this is really cool because it's almost like, it's basically like, this is rooted in a little bit of a conspiracy. So if you like cool conspiracies, then stick around because it's going to get good. So basically, the people developing this conspiracy claim that the people in power were trying to rewrite history to discredit the original solfeggio frequencies, and the reason is because they hold spiritual and metaphysical power. The fact is, we know where ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la comes from, and we also know where do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti comes from, and it comes from Judo's frequencies. Yet they're supposed to be at least 2,000 years older. We know the seventh note was added by Giovanni Battista Doni in the 16th century, and this is why people are skeptical of the whole thing. So Guido developed this system to teach monks how to sight read and hear pitches and manipulate the interval vocally that they were singing in the Gregorian chants. He noticed that there was a Latin hymn called Ut Queant Texis, and it featured phrases that begin with the 6 notes that were Ut, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. The Latin stanza, which highlights the solfeggio frequencies, comes from this hymn, which it's going to be really fun to hear me say this in Latin because I don't speak Latin and I am probably going to butcher it, but I'm going to do the best I can. It is Ut quont lesis, rason efre febris, mirio gestorium, famule tutorium, solo lo polute, labi led etiam, sancte lochonias. So the translation translates to, so that your servants may, with loosened voices, resound the wonders of your deeds. Clean the guilt from our stained lips, O St. John. By reading the translation, you can see that the idea that this has a frequency of healing power encoded in it is pretty obvious. Basically saying that you say those words and you'll be cleaned by John the Baptist. So I'm going to include a link to another YouTube video that sings that hymn, and I haven't listened to it yet, so I know I probably said it wrong, but anyway, fast forward 500 years later, and Giovanni Battista decides he doesn't like the UT, and just fucking changes it to do. And that Sancte Lohanas, the end, should be C instead of SA. So, and that is the accepted story of how it all went down. Despite any contradictions, we end up with a twisted translation to fit the narrative, which is, do let our voices resonate most purely, miracles telling, far greater than many, so let our tongues be lavish in your praises, St. John the Baptist. This is how soul becomes so, and C was added where John the Baptist originally is the Lohanas, Sancte Lohanas. So now it's not even a 7-note scale or an octave when you loop back to the root, that the way it was invented, just that the solfeggio notation was. It's not unbelievable that historians knew that the system was already in use, and this is why it's a conspiracy. But there's no conspiracy without a motive, of course. So the motive is to hide the 528 hertz frequency and the other healing frequencies. So basically that's the backstory, and that's the officially accepted version of how this went down. So long story short, what the researchers and theorists think that the reason this conspiracy is to hide the true person who actually made the scale, and that true creator is supposed to be Pythagoras. So if Pythagoras discovered the true, he was supposed to be the true discoverer of the 528 frequency, and everybody knows about Pythagoras. He single-handedly moved Western civilization towards years in the future with philosophy, religion, mysticism, and mathematics. He was literally that good. The last thing the elites would want is for the truth of the solfeggio frequency to get attached to Pythagoras, because then people would take it more seriously. So Pythagoras figured out the math behind consonants and dissonance and chords and how the scales are built. It's all based on ratios and wavelengths that produce harmonics, whether that be the golden ratio, pi, whatever. Pythagoras was messing with sacred geometry and all the stuff Socrates and our current physicists would be playing with well before any of them were even alive. So, for instance, physicists have been playing around with sound vibrations and moving them off of 2-dimensional strings onto 3-dimensional plates to produce the I think it's called Chladni patterns, and it's the science of somatics. So I can include I'll post a what a pattern looks like on my Instagram story, and I'll Snapchat it too. So follow me on those channels to see what these Chladni's patterns look like. And you can also go on YouTube and find lots of examples of this. But basically, so the vibrations are forming structures if tuned just right, and they can also destroy them if we don't use the right notes. So you can see like how water vibrates at 526 hertz. So it's really interesting. So I'm sorry, 528 hertz. But okay, so the conspiracy of the Solfeggio frequency, and this is like a long-lived life because this is 11 minutes and we're still on metaphysical stuff. So right now, Western music and a lot of Eastern music that's beginning to adopt, especially like the pop music, the standard tuning of the instrument is A440. And this means that's the bass octave. The note should be tuned to no matter what they use, they're just going to tune it to 440 hertz, and that's the universal standard. So this is how everyone does it now, and this is thanks to the meeting between the Pope back with judo and the intervention of Giovanni Battista Doni. This is why this is the universal standard, because it's not surprising to think the conspiracy is behind in the Vatican. Now, it says because all the intervals are built to that consonant of 440, that it's not based on Pythagoras' mathematics, basically. It sounds great, but it doesn't resonate with our actual frequency. We've been trained to hear it a certain way. The actual tuning was at 444 hertz, which makes complete sense in the tune of sacred geometry and numerology. But of course, like all conspiracies, it's supposed to go back to like the Nazis or the Illuminati or the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, whatever, whoever. Although they didn't invent this shift away, they employed it after learning about the subconscious and how to use propaganda from Sigmund Freud. They made this big mass adoption about 1955 by the International Standards Organization, so all music and anything produced after 1955 had that standard of 444 hertz, which is crazy. So basically, you can build a system of consonant sounds off of A40. The physical world and our bodies are harmonized with A444. So we've been trained to enjoy the slightly off tune 440, and the slight shift is unnoticeable to our ears, but it wreaks havoc on our minds and our bodies. So that makes sense. So this supports the ideas that go back to somatics and the structures that are created at the original frequency instead of the 440. So in the original frequency of 444, you get the tetrahedron, the hexahedron, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the isahedron. So with these 440s, these are less symmetrical and less stable. So you're literally putting in frequencies into your energetic aura that don't resonate into any sacred geometry. And it affects our bodies and it affects our minds. And we're being coerced to living in and cultivating this slight discord inspired by the vibrations that are just slightly dissonant to the healing properties in the original frequency. So that the idea is that music has been militarized and weaponized as a psychological and physical assault against the population. Aggression, agitation, illness, and other types of problems are exacerbated by modern music. Is basically what it's saying, which is crazy to think. It's an idea, and I must say, it's definitely interesting to think about. I feel there definitely can be some dissonance in modern music, and that's probably why I don't feel as called to it. Don't get me wrong, Bodak Yellow's the shit, but there's also conspiracy that John Lennon was killed because he recorded Imagine at 528 hertz, which was a direct slap in the face to the music standard and the industry to show that he was going to use the healing frequency no matter what. So that was also something you can look into if you're interested in conspiracy theories. So just to let you know, I wrote this down the other day and it really jumped out to me as a Nikola-Tesla quote, and then we'll jump into the upcoming cannabis events. But each frequency, which I'm going to start teaching my kids the Ut, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. That's the shit right there. So Ut is 396 hertz. And also when you add up all these numbers and bring them down to one simple numerology, it goes 369, 369, 369. So Nikola-Tesla said if you understand the root of 3, 6, and 9, if you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have the key to the universe. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Solfeggio frequencies, and you can use these for lots of different things. You can type these in on YouTube. Simply just listening to these podcasts sends out a healing frequency to you. So Ut is 396 hertz, and this is turning grief into joy and liberating guilt and fear. Re is 417 hertz, which is undoing situations and facilitating change. Mi is 528 hertz, and it's transformation and miracles and DNA repair. Fa is 639 hertz, which reconnects and balances relationships. Sol is 741 hertz, which is solving problems, expressions, and solutions. And La is 852 hertz, which is awakening intuition and returning to spiritual order. We are playing the podcast over 963 hertz, which stops overthinking and is angelic, very angelic music. It connects you to source. So, moving on now to the cannabis world. If you want to learn more about frequency healing and have specific guided meditations that I can make you customly with whatever frequency you would like, let me know. Reach out. Reach out to me via my email at thestonedhousewife@gmail.com. You can reach out to me through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, anything. Just, reach out if you're interested in frequency healing, and I can get you set up really well. Actually, we have one more thing to talk about for the metaphysical realm, which is the planetary alignment of the day. And the moon is in Aquarius now, and it just left Capricorn yesterday. And yesterday was just like, if you felt like listless, that's why. But the moon is trine Venus and Libra, so it's mellow and flowing personalities today. Aquarius rules the angles and the electrical forces. So it's really interesting that today is the day that the Frequency podcast is getting delivered and this information is being downloaded to you all, because this is a great day for you to be receptive to it and to really understand it. So Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which brings desire for pleasure and for freedom. And one way to definitely feel freedom and feel empowered is to know that you can listen to a frequency healing session and be guided to actually repair your DNA on multiple different levels. So you're sending those sacred geometric symbols into your body, which definitely helps. So the moon is trine the sun as well. So it's funny, just let it be, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Harmony is everywhere today. So really look for these things and look for these while the moon is in Aquarius. Today is also the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. So public affairs become more important, and interest in welfare, social welfare sense is definitely heightened. I can see where that is definitely being taken into consideration by more people. People are operating from intellectual rather than emotional motivations, and will be searching for freedom and expressing that. We want to be able to have our thoughts come and go without restrictions, right? So, you can do this. All right, so moving on to cannabis events. So next month on October 13th, there's going to be a wonderful little event taking place in Malibu. And this is going to be the Sacred Space Sleepover hosted by Hint of Greens with help from the Emerald Exchange, Balanced Life Leslie, and me. We're very, very, very excited to bring a very intense healing workshop to the wonderful people in California. It's pretty cheap to fly out if you're from Colorado. You might as well come out. Treat yourself. You need a retreat. Come away for a weekend, come to Malibu and really enjoy healing in the hilltops of this sacred space, the Great Spirit Ranch. It is going to be a beautiful, beautiful evening of metaphysical talks and family-style chakra-based dinners, Reiki, so much healing, shamanic wisdom, channeling, everything that you can think of that you've wanted to do in a metaphysical healing event. We're bringing it to you. So if you are interested, reach out. I'll put the link below, and it's going to be October 13th. We're bringing back the divinity of Friday the 13th because 13 is actually a divine feminine number. Of course, that's why it's so shrouded in darkness, because it's supposed to be evil, but it's actually not. So, moving on from there, I'm going to smoke a little bowl of some Sensi Star, and you can see what this looks like on my YouTube channel and also on my Instagram feed. I've got a great little video where I grind it up in a mortar and pestle, and I remember telling someone the other night at Sensi Night that I ground up my weed with a mortar and pestle, and they just like thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I was like, yeah, it's wizard as fuck too, like, you know, it's pretty awesome, and I haven't used a grinder in a long time. Like, I won't ever use a grinder again. I'll just have different size mortars and pestles. But yeah, so after I'm going to hit this bowl, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to wrap this Lift of Life up pretty quickly with talking some 3D realm stuff, with bringing it back down, getting out of our crown chakra, coming back into like our root chakra, using some Broadway to bring us back home. Okay, guys, so if you haven't seen or heard or know of who Lin Manuel Miranda is, I highly suggest. If you don't know who he is an amazing lyricist, songwriter, producer, person, creative source spirit, amazing man. He wrote the Hamilton musical, and I've recently been listening to the Hamilton soundtrack, and you can read about the Hamilton soundtrack and why it is such a pure expression of creative source. There's a lot of amazingness in the Hamilton soundtrack, and you can really tell that it's like Lin Manuel's baby. Like, he created it with a lot of help from Questlove and the Roots, and it's just amazing. Like, it's just it's amazing soundtrack. Like, if you can really like listen to something and visualize everything that's happening, then it's powerful and it's really awesome. But that's what I've been listening to for probably every day, singing songs from it every day. Like, who doesn't like to sing Broadway? Like, if you're singing and you're screaming to the top of your lungs, like, sing it out, sing it loud, fucking, like, just rise up and sing. It is so healing to sing. If you're not singing, or you don't sing, or you're afraid to sing, really try to confront those fears and sing by yourself, sing in the car. Like, there's nothing I love more than seeing someone beside me having an amazing time in the car and singing their heart out to whatever the fuck they're singing. Like, it's awesome to see that. It makes people happy. So, like, be your true self and fucking sing. Like, all right, and for today's cannabis and crystal pairing, head over to the stonedhousewife.net and read the article about getting creative source from music. And there is a cannabis and crystal pairing in that, so you will really enjoy that. And there's some great pictures in there. So, TV-wise, been watching, the past couple nights I've been watching that 70s show, just rewatching it from the first season, and I've been laughing my ass off. It's freaking hysterical. I didn't remember how funny that show was, and I really like that show to begin with. And now that, Game of Thrones is off, it's like, what do you watch? What do you, tune up to? But, we binged watched Breaking Bad pretty recently, and that was a really intense show for me to watch. Like, shows that have a lot of violence and like imagery, like that kind of, I mean, I could watch Game of Thrones, that's crazy, but like, yeah, it's just like, I think when you binge watch like 12 episodes of Breaking Bad, like, it starts bleeding into your other realms, and it's crazy intense. But yeah, so I'm trying to think if there's any last thing I want to jump in and add today, but that looks like it's going to be great. So thank you all for joining me today. This podcast is brought to you by Cannabis Calendar, which is your comprehensive guide for all things events. You need to be on Cannabis Calendar. If you're not, go to the website. Jordan & Jane's is pure hemp tea, hot or cold, with so much love, available at jordanandjanes.com and the Louisville Farmers Market until it is over. And Stash Logic's your best travel and storage companion to keep everything safe and locked up, and Spirit Guide magazines with founders Arizona Belle and May Luna Rad. Check out their Instagram. They've been going and doing a lot of really amazing things. And check me out soon on the Intrepid Hearts podcast. And I sit down with Gigi and Anna, and it is amazing to have a talk with these powerful, inspirational women. So follow intrepidhearts.com and look for me on their podcast coming out soon. See you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Join me every week or every other week on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on the stonedhousewife.net. Until next time, stay magical, receive, align and receive the flow, and stay high stars.